I think it is, as a leader, either in an organization or a family, you're responsible for the structure. And it's not a situation where you can simply say to kids, I trust you to decide what time you're going to go to bed tonight. Maybe 17-year-olds, you can do that, but 8-year-olds, just you have to provide the rules for them. And the same as a leader, you have to make sure there's structure and expectations. But at the same time, at both home and at work, you need to listen to the people who are having to live with these rules. The kids need to be able to come to you and say, this isn't working and this is why, and we need to work out a different solution.
This is Get Unstuck Podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs who prioritize their life first, business second. I'm Mutita Panmuk, your host, who dedicates my life to designing and building a business that supports lifestyle. We will learn together from entrepreneurs around the world how they overcome their life challenges, their business obstacles, and yet still get unstuck from the hamster wheel of burying themselves into their business. Because time is the number one commodity in the world that you cannot get back once it's gone. So let's shorten the learning curve and see how can we prioritize better. Let's get unstuck. Hi, Get Unstuck Nation. So our guest today, she is a social worker turned to lawyers who advise young serving organizations about best practice for protecting the children in their care. But also, she also fosters other people's children as well. So we are going to learn how important of the nuclear family, how you can start taking care of this. And in Get Unstuck method, we always say that you need to know your priorities and how can you get all together. And today we have Debbie Ausburn here at Get Unstuck podcast. So we're going to learn from experts about how can we build a strong core family where we can focus on children and our kids, so that this is the most important topic that is dear to my heart. So please welcome Debbie to Get Unstuck podcast today. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
Doing wonderfully.
So before we get started, how did you get interested into children care or started this as a business even?
Well, it started actually, my parents were very involved with camps and youth organizations when I was growing up, and I helped them and just kept doing it after they retired and then later became ill. I have just always had working with kids as a part of my life and have not really ever quit caring about those younger age groups.
When you work with kids when you were younger and when you were a teenager and when you were an adult, do you feel different working with them?
Well, yes. When I was a teenager, they were closer to my age, so they were more my peers. And then when I became a young adult, I had to make that transition from being a leader, a peer leader, to being an authority figure. And so I remember that transition, suddenly realizing, oh, wait, I'm in charge here. I'm not just complaining about the rules. I am the rules. So yes, there was a transition there.
So this is kind of like family business or starting from like something that you're interested in for the whole childhood until become the current interest as well?
Yes, it was. It was something that, it was an interest. I started out when I graduated from university. I worked as a social worker for a while, working with young people in juvenile court. And back then we called them at-risk kids. Now I think we discuss them as survivors of trauma. But it was a population that I knew and I understood, and I worked well with that age group. I burned out as a social worker. I got tired of dipping out the ocean with a teaspoon. And so I retreated to law school, but stayed involved in working with kids, and then gradually found myself as a lawyer advising and defending organizations that work with kids. So I became an advisor to the kind of groups that I had once worked with and worked for.
So let's start from the perspective of the family perspective first. I know that you also are foster family, right?
Yes, I was a foster parent. I did that before I got married. I was single, but I knew from my days as a social worker how needed foster families were, and I knew because of my experience I had the skill set, and so it was a nice fit between the need and my skills. And then a few years later, I married a man with 5 kids. Only 2 of them were still at home, but you end up parenting lots of adult kids too. And then he and I were foster parents together. And now we work with an organization that we're not fostering per se, but we are mentoring teenagers they've aged out of the foster system. They've never connected with a family. And so we're working as they aren't living with us, but we're mentoring them.
You mentioned about the skill set that foster parents should have. So what are they? What are those?
Well, you have to understand what the kids have been through. You have to now we are much more aware of trauma informed, although I think we're taking it way too far. Not everything is trauma. Sometimes life is just difficult. And not being invited to a birthday party is not traumatic. It's difficult, but it's not trauma. But as a foster parent, I was working and parenting kids who had been through severe trauma. And so a lot of their bad behavior was reaction to their trauma, and trauma does tend to hijack normal development. And so you have to understand that. You have to be willing to develop a lot of patience. I always joke that the good news about me as a foster parent, when I'm talking to people, I always say, look, if a left-brained, empathy-challenged lawyer can do this, then you can do this. So you don't have to start out with patience, but you have to be willing to develop it.
So do you think, would it be different when you shift from the positioning of a foster parent versus you become a consultant? How your lens has shifted?
Well, it hasn't shifted that much because I still, in my personal life, I'm still a parent. I joke, I've never had biological children, but through fostering and adoption and step parenting, I've collected 7 kids and 10 grandkids. So I am always involved with them as a parent, but then as an advisor, I have a step back. I'm not providing hands-on care. I'm just telling people what I learned, and sometimes I'm providing legal advice, and then sometimes I'm just providing advice that I've learned from other clients and good techniques that other clients have adopted that I can become a clearinghouse for, I suppose would be the best way to explain that.
What about when organization needs to work with kids? What type of industry that we are talking about? You mentioned camping, but what could be the industry that we are talking about?
Oh, anything from schools to religious organizations have a lot of youth outreaches. There are day camps, there are overnight camps, there's child care centers, there's child welfare organizations, as in residential centers where kids live. Sometimes they're group homes for teenagers who there are not enough individual foster families for them, so teenagers tend to end up in group homes. There are psychiatric residential treatment facilities that work with kids. I advise those. So just anywhere that you find kids, sports leagues for kids who are living at home, or dance companies, or any number of extracurricular activities that involve kids. So we call them youth serving organizations, YSOs. So any organization that serves young people is one that I've dealt with a wide variety of them.
So what should be I see that you mentioned about the strong child protection policy quite often. So could you explain about that? What exactly it is?
Well, one of the biggest problems that we're seeing with youth organizations over the past 30 to 40 years is all of them have done a good job protecting the minors that are in their care. You have all sorts of scandals that have come out. I suppose USA Gymnastics gymnastics is one that most people have heard of. And then there's a lot of individual schools and childcare centers and groups like that I have counseled. I've defended them as a lawyer and have defended them in litigation as well as advised them. So out of that experience, I've learned there are many things that people need to have in place in their organization. And I suppose the most important thing is it needs to be a culture. It's not just a zero tolerance. Here are the rules from the top down, and we're going to get rid of anyone who transgresses it in any minor inadvertent way. That just, it sounds good, but it causes problems and makes your staff paranoid and doesn't really protect kids. So it's much better for it to be a part of a culture that is from the ground up, and that the people who are on the front lines of your staff, they are the ones who have to live with it every day. So you need to listen to them and build your policy around your unique culture and your unique budget and constraints and abilities, and understand the principles, and then put rules in place that your organization can follow those principles of keeping kids safe, not allowing anyone to isolate them, of having transparency at all times with what's going on, those sort of principles.
What is the most issue you found regarding to the child? I cannot say it correctly.
The child protection policy.
The child protection policy.
If you're outside the industry, some of these acronyms don't make a lot of sense. So you have to sort of learn it. But child protection policies, child safety policies, I think the biggest problem that we see is top-down policies, and they don't work. And so you get a lot of what in engineering and medicine they called normalized deviance. So in other words, people take shortcuts. Because they think, well, these rules are designed to prevent pedophiles, and I'm not a pedophile, and I just need to get the job done, so I'll just get the job done. And you end up with enough of those, and someone with bad intent manages to come in and take advantage of various lapses, because, again, it's not part of the culture. It is simply a top-down policy that sometimes is enforced and sometimes isn't.
This is something that I have been thinking, because like if you have a smaller company, a smaller organization, this would be easier to control, right? Because not really. Not really, because what happens then is with the smaller groups, you tend to trust each other more and tend to break more rules
and
have more traffic then.
Yes, and it's sort of like that. Nothing would ever happen here because we know each other so well. And so I've seen plenty of problems with small groups where people think they know each other well, but you never can really know what's in a person's heart. So the culture matters no matter how large or how small the organization is.
Yeah, I agree 100%. What I have been thinking is about, this is something that one of the podcast guests taught me, that if you are a leader at your company, you should be a leader at home, but you also needs to be a follower as well. So what do you think about the family dynamic and also the alignment between the organization that you are working with and the family that you have? I think this is a good topic to talk about.
Yes. Well, I think it is, as a leader, either in an organization or a family, you're responsible for the structure. And it's not a situation where you can simply say to kids, I trust you to decide what time you're going to go to bed tonight. Maybe 17-year-olds, you can do that, but 8-year-olds, just you have to provide the rules for them. And the same as a leader, you have to make sure there's structure and expectations. But at the same time, at both home and at work, you need to listen to the people who are having to live with these rules. The kids need to be able to come to you and say, this isn't working and this is why, and we need to work out a different solution. And, sometimes kids just want a different rule because they want a different rule, or they want you to take out the trash because they don't want to. And that's where you have to say, well, no, it's your job to take the trash out. It's not my job. And You need to make sure it gets done. And do you have everything that you need to get it done? And if the answer is they have everything they need to get it done, then I trust you. I believe in you. You can get this done. So, that same principle is at work too. Do you have everything you need? And then, okay, here's the expectation, and I expect you to get this done, and I believe that you can.
Yeah, 100%. And you make me think about something. Another important part is to build confidence in, I'm gonna say inner child again. I'm mixing
No,
with
yes.
this terminology. I think this is something that it needs to be taught since a very young age about making decisions and also being confident within themselves.
Yes. And I would say, honestly, one of the biggest areas that I see my contemporaries and parents make a mistake in, ironically, they help too much. They're so worried about their kids' self-esteem that they keep them from failing. And sometimes you just need to let kids fail. You need to let them find their own solution to it. And they won't get there the way that we think they ought to, but we need to let them live with the logical consequences of their decisions and find their way out of it. Now, that doesn't mean that we're punitive. We say, I love you. I care about you. We will walk alongside this journey, but you got yourself into this, and I'm not going to get yourself out. So, for example, when I was one of my jobs was I was a prosecutor, and we had a federal park in my jurisdiction, and it was amazing to me how many parents came in with kids who had a fine, and the parents would say to me and to the judge, "Look, we'll just take care of this fine for our son." And my reaction to them was always, "No, your son was the one who was speeding. What I want to hear is how you're going to make him pay the fine. I don't want the fine paid. I want him to learn the lesson." And that was always with my kids. If you aren't getting your work done for your homework for a big project, I'm not going to do it for you. I love you. I care about you. Make sure you have everything you need. And if you want a bad grade, then you can live with your bad grade. Now, we had consequences at home for it. They lost privileges. One of my sons had we had a, if he didn't meet a certain standard, he for grades, then he would lose his electronics. But we did let him buy back his weekends and holidays. He was in Boy Scouts at the time, and so he could get a rank advancement or a merit badge, or one of those kind of things, and he could, if he got that, then we'd let him have electronics for the weekend or school holiday, or when school was not in session. And he made Eagle Scout when he was 15. So that worked out well as a motivator for him. So it's a way of providing high nurture and high structure at the same time.
How can the parent find a balance? How would you suggest them?
I think, first of all, you have to be willing to step back and watch your kids fail and watch them suffer. And that is really hard. It is really hard. But we have to understand that the stakes are lower now than they ever will be in the future. So, it's better for kids to flunk classes in elementary school than in high school. It's better for them to flunk classes in high school than in college. And I have friends who, I remember a conversation with friends. She said, I have to leave early because I have to go home and get my kid's college essay written. And I said, "I'm sorry, you're writing your kid's college essay?" "Yeah, if I don't do it, it'll never get done and she won't get into college." And I'm thinking to myself, well, how do you expect her to do well in college if she can't even write the essay to get in? And then, of course, my friend, once the kid got in college, my friend was there constantly. And I have heard stories, I've never seen this with my own eyes, but working in youth organizations with camps and other groups that use young people, about 40% of them tell me that they've had parents show up for job interviews along with their kids. So it never ends if you don't learn early to step back and let your kids fail and find their own way out of that failure. And what your job is to be a cheerleader and say, it's like when your kid's playing on a sports team, you don't get out there and run the bases with them. You stand on the side, you cheer. Hopefully, you don't yell at the other players and the coach and those kind of problems, but you let your child know, I believe in you. I think you can do this, and I will stand here and watch you do this.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Just be there for them and let them know that this is the safe space so that
Yes.
they can come back anytime, right?
Right. And, it's unconditional love. It's not unconditional commitment because, you can't, you can't support addictions or any of those kind of things. But you can always say to kids, I love you, I care about you, and I will help you when I can. But it is your life, and you have to make the decisions, and you have to do the things you need to do to put the building blocks in place. I can support you, I can care about you, I can cheer for you, but I cannot live your life for you.
100%. So in case anyone want to follow your work or work with you, where can they reach out for you then?
Yes, my website is debbieausburn.com, and you can find all of my books and everything there. And then a link to ysoacademy.com is where I have a lot of online courses for youth organizations, and I'm working on a series for foster and step parents.
So everyone, the links for the website, for both websites will be around here and also in the description as well as the show notes. Make sure that you check them out. I think it's amazing and it's a great resources to learn more about how can you understand more about the parenting, and also in case your organization interested to improve your child protection policy. I say this correct now.
Yes.
So make sure that you check Debbie website. So thank you so much, Debbie, for joining Get Unstuck podcast today.
Thank you.
I hope this episode inspires you wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey so that you can have your business that supports your lifestyle. Get a show note at getunstuckmethod.com/podcast. Review what we have learned together today and start implementing right now. See it by yourself. The result of your consistent action are worth it. You deserve the freedom to enjoy your life. Until the next episode, let's get unstuck.